Okay, so you guys did all of your inverse operations to solve these 5 numbers, or to get these 5 numbers that I didn't tell you, okay? If I had given you those equations right away, you would have said, I can't do it. But you can. You just need to think a little bit more about what you're doing. So the reason I started with those inverse operations is because now, here are those equations that we just came up with. Now we're going to do some examples, okay? You know how to do this. You just did this, okay? So this is going into your notes. Please get out your toolkit at the same time because we're going to add some things into our toolkit as we work, okay? And then, okay, so once you have your toolkit out, oh, sorry, not inverse operations. Please label the box, and you should only need one box. Inverse functions, okay? So we're going to be solving our inverse functions today, okay? So, yes. So, this is inverse functions. In your toolkit, please put a little star right here. And then a number 1, because we're going to skip that star. We're going to come back to it in a minute. Okay, but we're going to fill in our first box. So, yesterday, remember how you had a table and a graph? Okay, what did we do with our table with our x and y values? What did we do to them? Inverse, so what did we do to them? We switched x and y yesterday, right? Isn't that our first thing that we did? So on this first example, we're going to do the same thing. See how I have x and y? I'm literally going to rewrite this as x equals 2y plus 4. And then we're going to write that in our toolkit. Switch x and y. Okay, now what do you think my next step is going to be? I heard solve. Solve for what? We've already solved for x right here. Solve for y. So our next step is going to be solve for y using inverse operations. Okay, so we're going to include that on our toolkit next, and then we will do it together. Solve for y using inverse operations. So what is our first step to solving for y here? What do I need to do first? Yeah, I'm going to solve for y using inverse operations, but what's my first inverse operation that I use? Subtract 4. Why am I subtracting 4? Because addition and subtraction are inverses of each other. So now I have x minus 4 equals 2y. So we're going to include that a little bit on our toolkit. Addition and subtraction are inverses. Okay, so addition and subtraction are our inverse operations for each other. What else is inverses? What do I do next? Divide what? Y. Okay, why is that what works? It's the inverse of multiplication. So now I have x minus 4 divided by 2 equals y. Did I solve for y?
No.
I didn't?
Oh, yeah.
And that's my answer.
Really?
Yeah, really.
Oh, that's easy.
Okay. So next on your toolkit under add and subtract, you're going to do multiply and divide because they are inverses. Okay, so if we're looking at number 2, what do I do first? What's my first step? What'd you say? How? Minus what? Perfect. Yeah, switch x and y. X equals 3y minus 6. Thank you. Next step. What do I do next? Why am I adding 6? Addition is the inverse operation of subtraction. So I have x plus 6 equals 3y. What do I do next? Divide by 3. Are we following along so far? Okay. So then I get x plus 6 over 3 equals y. Okay, so yes, this is easy. The only way it gets harder is when you have more, like, multiple operations. So remember on the guess my number game that I had, as we moved on, I added more and more operations in. That's how this gets harder. You don't change what you're doing, you just add more operations, or it has more steps to the problem, okay? So before we move on, between add and subtract, those are inverse operations. Multiply and divide are, and we talked about one other one that you might see. What else did we use in the guess my number? What other operation was it? Square and square root. So we're going to include that on here too. Thank you. Okay, on the next slide, here are some definitions. You don't have to write this down. It's just saying an inverse function is a function that undoes anything that the original function does, which is what we're doing. So the inverses that we're finding, they undo whatever the original function was. So from our graphs yesterday, remember when they were symmetrical, that means they are the exact opposite. Now, steps to finding an inverse, what does that first step say? First, what? Replace the function's name with y, but we had y on both of these already. Okay, but normally I won't. We have the rest of the steps are the same. But on 3 and 4, do I have y already there? No. So I would need to change like f of x to y or p of x to y and then continue solving, okay? So on your toolkit where I had you write that asterisk and skip it, we're going to put that there. Change f of x to y. Now, will I always have f of x? No. I'm just putting f of x because that's our general function name. It's shorter and easier to write. But whatever the function name is, change that to y. So please include that on your toolkit. So then, on number 3, what is my first step? What do I do very first? Change f of x to y. Literally change it. So I have y equals 3x plus 12. That's all I do first. What is my next step? I switch x and y. Yes. So now I have x equals 3y plus 12. We okay so far? Okay. What is my next step? Subtract 12. We're getting better at our inverse operations. I'm glad about that. So I'm going to subtract 12. Subtract 12. So I have x minus 12 equals 3y. What do I do now? Divide by 3 on both sides. And now I get x minus 12 over 3 equals y. Now, bless you, I'm going to tell you right now, this is not my final answer, okay? So see how I have it equal to y? Did I have y in my original function? No. It will be f of x, but not f of x. F inverse of x, because I just found the inverse. So remember our inverse notation from yesterday? F inverse with that little -1 of x equals x minus 12 over 3. Now this is my final answer. So all I did was I had to change the y to my inverse notation. Yes. So are you saying, so you would have that? Yeah, you can write that. You can have 1/3 x minus 4. You can divide each of them separately by 3, or you can leave it. It doesn't matter to me. Those are both correct answers, and I would take both of them. Okay? So step 3 in our toolkit is change y to f inverse of x, or whatever the function name is. Let's look at number 4 now. What's my first step? Change p of x to y. So I have y equals x over 2 plus 7. What is my second step? Switch x and y. You literally just switch them. That's all I do.
No, I know.
You have a question? Okay, we'll talk about that right now. What is my next step? Okay, so subtract 7 is my first inverse operation that I use. So subtract 7 from both sides. So I get x minus 7 equals y over 2. And then JJ says he doesn't know what to do with the fraction. So that says y divided by 2. Multiply, yes. Remember, a fraction bar just means division. So I'm going to multiply by 2. Now, if I write it like that, please look up here. Is that correct? Is that my answer? Why not? Oh, I have to multiply all of it. So, is that better? Okay. So if I write 2 times the quantity x minus 7 equals y, am I done? Is that okay? No. Do I have to distribute? No. Can I? Yeah. But if I don't, will it be wrong? No. So actually, the last step to make this right is P inverse of x equals, and I can either A, write it as 2 times x minus 7, or I can write it as 2x minus 14. These will both be correct. Does it matter to me which one you use? No. I normally write it as that one. It's one less step. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, I'm going to do number 5 with you, and then you're going to do 6 through 8. Is that okay? And that's all we have left for today. Okay, questions, or can we move on to the next example? Are you feeling pretty good about this? Okay. I think the hardest part, and what I've noticed in the past, is that you all struggle with the steps. So that's why I put them into your toolkit right now. So make sure you follow your toolkit and remember the steps, okay? Number 5. First step. Change d of x to y. Okay, second step. Multiply 7 is my next step? Now what do I do first? Switch x and y. You're close, Galilei. That's the next step after this. So switch x and y first. And then she said multiply by 7. Okay, now I multiply by 7, and I get 7x equals 3 times y minus 6. Do I need to distribute the 3 through my parentheses? No. If you do it, you'll actually be making more work for yourself. So what should I do instead? Why do I divide? To get right, but why am I dividing by 3? Because I'm multiplying. Thank you. That's what I'm asking. Because when you guys see this right here, if it's positive, I cannot tell you how many times I see you write minus 3. Is that right? No, because I'm not adding 3 to that. I'm multiplying it. This is a multiplication problem. Okay? So instead, I'm going to divide by 3. Okay. So now I can write 7x over 3, or I'm going to write 7/3 x, which mean the same thing, equals y minus 6. Now what do I do? Add 6 to both sides. So I get 7/3 x plus 6 equals y. Is that my final answer? No. I have to change y back, and it's going to be d inverse of x equals 7/3 x, or 7x over 3, plus 6. And now that's my final answer. Can you do the next one, please? Okay, let's see. Okay, if you're not done, don't look. But if you are, I'm going to start working this out. So, every single time, do you have to rewrite y equals and then switch x and y? Or can you just skip straight to switch x and y if you're ready? You can skip straight to it. The reason I haven't is because as soon as you look down and you look back up, you're like, Miss Audette, where did that come from? So I was writing all the steps. Now here, I am just going to switch them right away. Once you're done, you can check my work. If you're not, don't look up here yet. Okay, here's what I got. Is that what you got? Or did you get maybe this? Can I have either one of those answers? Yes. Now, can I have this as my answer? No, why not? I'm only multiplying the x there. I would have to put parentheses for that to be right. Otherwise, that is no good. Okay? I have 2 more U-tries for you. You ready? 2 more. Last 2. They should be pretty fast. Okay, please try these 2. I'll get it for you. Okay. Okay, let's check our answer to number 7. Is this what you got? A inverse of x equals x plus 3 divided by 4. Yeah? Okay, are you done with 8? Okay, if you're not, keep working. If you are, I will start working this one out because it doesn't have an answer that pops up. So, let's see. Okay, for the last one, b inverse of x equals x over 3 plus 5. Is that what you got? Yes. Yes or no? Okay. How are you feeling about this?